Thank you. Thank you, Indo Analytics, the entire organizing team, my co-panelists, and enlightened citizens of Chennai, young friends. As you can make out from my outfit itself, I am unfit here. First of all, I am neither a colonel or a general or a major, so that is one aspect. But more importantly, that, Colonel was talking about, I come from media. So what I'm going to do basically is, I'm going to build on what Colonel has already said. He started you showing by one important slide called nation state. Unfortunately, what has happened over the period of time, since independence period, that we have started perceiving state security as national security. So guarding borders, so when you talk about 2.5, we actually talk about the two fronts. I am basically talk about the half. Because I know that generals and colonels and admirals and majors and captains, all of them are capable of taking care of those two fronts. I am confident that our MEA and politicians, whoever is ruling, they know how to handle the geopolitics in the best interest. I am more concerned about the war that is going on in our minds. One thing that India lacked for last 2000 years is basically understanding about who we are, and two, the fundamental strategic culture to understand our foes and friends, as Colonel talked about. And that is the primary reason. Even a well-meaning major try to tell us that it is basically Kanyakumari to Kashmir. Why Kanyakumari to Kashmir? Why not Car Nicobar to Kailash? Why are we missing Andaman Nicobar? We always thought in terms of frontiers and not in terms of borders. Indian Ocean was a frontier for us. Northeast was a frontier for us. For us, border didn't matter. Why do we forget that Sri Lanka was just a commissionerate till 1923? But we miss out on this point simply because we have forgotten who we are. And therefore, Colonel, I put it even before economics. Understanding what changed Mao's revolution in China, or for that matter, Deng Xiaoping's policies in China. The sense of who we are and how a betrayed country for 1,000 years can revive itself with new policies. That has completely changed. My fundamental argument is, next, not just 8 years, but till 2047, this Amrit Kal is going to define our security paradigm on the basis of the kind of strategic culture that we are going to build in next 8 to 10 years. And when I say strategic culture, it comes with power, prosperity, peace, everything. But more than that, how do we see ourselves as a nation? I think there are 3 kinds of battles that are going on in our mind about ourselves. One paradigm tells us, which British actually taught us, and unfortunately the Nehruian paradigm carried it forward, that we are a nation in the making. There is a second paradigm which came in 1920s, and in post-independent India, communist and many regional parties actually fed us that we were never a nation, we can never be a nation, we are a conglomeration of many nationalities. And there is third idea that is existing from time immemorial, that irrespective of our governance model, we have been one Rashtra from Kailasa to Car Nicobar geoculturally. And that is the reason when Marudha Pandyan brothers called all the kings and passed a resolution in Shivganga, they didn't call it Dravidian Declaration, they didn't call it Shivganga Declaration, they call it Jambu Dvipa Declaration. It was in 1801. So we never saw that only as Dravidian or Tamilian identity. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj didn't call it Maratha Empire. He called it Hindavi Swarajya. British call it Maratha Empire. We teach it Maratha Empire. Maharaja Ranjit Singh, while donating gold to Kashi, he didn't call it Sikh Empire. British call it Sikh Empire. We call it Sikh Empire. Ahilyabai Holkar, a widow who was ruling from Indore, built a entire Grand Trunk Road. She built entire water management system. She built all the ghats of Kashi, which was beyond her state. Nobody objected to it. Because for us, state was just a governing model. But Kashi was Kashi. Kailasa was Kailasa. Rameshwaram was Rameshwaram. Irrespective of our language or religion or sect, we have forgotten that, and that is the biggest threat to our national security. Unfortunately, the security paradigm with which we are perceiving our threats doesn't come from China or Pakistan. Of course, they may be playing their own cards. Any country will. And these people can tell you better. We also play ours. Our national security paradigm will be based on three critical issues. And I'm going to limit it to these three issues. As I said, sect or religion was never a factor for us. We always fought on very frivolous issues. We always had, unfortunately, jaichans among ourselves. But we didn't fight on the basis of language and religion, for sure. In fact, in 1905, when British tried to divide us on the basis of religion, Hindus and Muslims came together and fought back. And what was the slogan? One was Vanga Bhanga, the other was Vande Mataram. Vande Mataram became a slogan. We pressurized the British to take back the decision. In 1901, they had to change their capital from Calcutta to Delhi. Suddenly, by 1923, Vande Mataram became communal. I think we have lost the plot of our nationhood from 1923 to 1947, and that's why it led to partition. Now, if we want to avoid that, in next 25 years, exactly the same period, 2023 to 2047, we have to reverse that historical process, and that's why understanding of history is important. The idea of Khilafat sown the seeds of Pakistan. Similarly, if you see the kind of PFI project that came up in recently revealed documents, they are also talking about 2047 project. So I see this process of growing radicalization as the first threat. How do we deal with it in terms of security paradigm, not just as geopolitics, internally, that is going to decide how are we going to emerge as a nation. Second most important dimension of our national security is going to be decided by data and technology. Whatever Colonel said, whether they delete it or not, Google knows he was speaking here. Google knows that I am in Chennai. I am speaking in this program. And there must be somebody who is watching me. What am I going to speak? So that they can bash RSS. Unfortunately, in strategic terms, we don't know and we don't have, unfortunately, a clear-cut strategy, especially in the social and cultural realm, where we know how to manage our data and utilize it for the national purpose. So we don't find any problem in, having ISRO having tie-up with Microsoft, for instance. For me, that is going to decide our security paradigm in next 25 years. But the third most important aspect is the threat that is coming in the form of wokeism. The ideas that are fed in our mind through this social media space means, for me, in my introduction, they perhaps missed out one important aspect, that I am a JNU student. And I was there on that panel that day, on the same day, when Kanhaiya Kumar faced those allegations, and he was, and with, including Khalid, and they were defending it as a freedom of speech and expression. And nobody find it problematic. Forget about that. In Hyderabad Central University and JNU, for Yaqub Menon and that professor was hanged in Afzal Guru, there was a namaz-e-janaza. And nobody finds it problematic. A terrorist is being glorified by somebody, especially courts are opened at 2 o'clock. Next day people are having namaz in his name. And our society doesn't find it problematic. That is the biggest threat. We have a lot of energy. We have youth as a strength. We have demographic dividend. We have technological advantage. But unfortunately, that energy doesn't have direction. I'm not a very pessimistic person, because I see most very enthusiastic and creative and positive youngsters who are coming up with various ideas, very rooted. They are soul searching, they are reconnecting with their roots. Some are doing research in our original documents. But I think our security paradigm need a major shift. We have been nuclear-centric or we have been Pakistan-centric simply because Americans wanted us to be. We need to understand that for last, the three ideas that we have been fighting, that India is neither nation in the making, nor India is a conglomeration of many nationalities. India is an ancient Rashtra. That identity, geocultural identity, civilizational identity needs to be revisited, reinforced, re-established. That will be the single point that will ensure our national security on all parameters, including economy. So, how to do that? I think the crux lies somewhere between 1498 to 1830s, 1840s. Why this particular period? Because till 1830s in 1840s, we knew what and for what and how we were fighting for. So when Portuguese arrived, we knew very well that Vasco da Gama didn't come here for trading. There was much more to his intent, and I'm not saying it. He has said in his diary that at the behest of Pope, I am being sent by the King of Portuguese to spread the message of Christianity. That is what Vasco da Gama has written in his diary called First Voyage. We are the fools who believe that, he came just for black pepper. Sorry, he was already fighting against jihad on Arabian soil before coming here. Our ancestors were very clear, and that's why Maruta Pandyan brothers called all the kings and said, this is not just about land, this is not about just tax collection, this is an attack on our identity, our culture, our temples, and that's why we should come together. So Swadharma was the first battle of our narrative. Then came the instrument change. And British realized, so 1930s, 1940s, they came up with another instrument called education. Till then they studied us. They changed the ideas, they introduced new paradigms, and Madras presidency and Bengal presidency were the biggest victims of this colonization process. I would request youngsters to just read one important document in life called Beautiful Tree by Acharya Dharmpal. A Bauch Gandhian who has talked about the status of education in pre-British Madras presidency. And he has written this not on the basis of Sanskrit documents, not on the basis of Modi's documents. He has done that on the British documents. So read it. It is an eye-opener. You will get a completely new idea about India's social situation. The stripes that Colonel was talking about is an artificial creation. Unless we address that, we are not going to solve our security issues for the next 25 years. And therefore, the second instrument that our ancestors fought was Swabhasha and national education. National language and national education. Then British introduced the third instrument called economic exploitation. Systematic destruction of migration is not a problem, Colonel. Problem is our view of seeing our villages. We are seeing our villages from British point of view just as agrarian economy. Our villages were most entrepreneurial economy. And that's why we were having 25% share in the global GDP. We were export-oriented economy. Again, I'm not saying this. British and American documents justify this. So their third instrument of colonization was destruction of Indian economy. So our response was Swadeshi. And only fourth instrument was law and representation, and that's why our fourth response was Swaraj. Unfortunately, what has happened in last 75 years, that we have started believing that Swaraj or political independence was the only objective of our freedom struggle, and we have forgotten that Swadharma, Swadeshi and Swabhasha was also there. The moment we restore these three, our idea of nationhood changes, and therefore our paradigm for national security changes. So the protecting border doesn't become the main objective. Our armies and our navies and our air forces will take care of it. The point is, are we aware as citizens who we are as a nation, what has been our civilizational identity, and what for our freedom fighters fought this war for more than 400 years, not 100 years. at least from 1498, even if we forget Mongols and Turks and Afghan invasions. If we keep that in mind, what we had and what we have lost and what we need to regain, we change our security paradigm. We cannot just talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. If we have to re-establish this, we have to re-establish Swadharma. Because this is the land where anybody and everybody can practice and preach his or her own religion. This is the only land where Europeans came and could not destroy the civilization. From Canada to Australia, you pick any land where Europeans went. What was so special in us that despite colonization from 1498 or efforts of colonization from 1498, they could not destroy us civilizationally? We just need to actually nurture those roots again, because the attack is on those roots. Borders have kept changing. Borders will be defended. Borders will be redrawn. The question is whether idea of Bharat lives or not. The fight is for idea of Bharat, and that's why our security paradigm has to have this civilizational identity at the core of national security, and not just state security in terms of borders. This is my humble submission. As I said, I'm unfit about talking, security paradigm. But being a journalist, being a true student of Bharat, I only feel that if we try to rekindle this civilizational identity, the idea of Bharat will survive. And if idea of Bharat survives, humanity will get peace and prosperity. Powerful idea of Bharat is the guarantee for global stability and peace. That is my, structural paradigm for not just for India, but for entire humanity. I'm happy to take questions on this. I hope I have, kindled some questions in your mind about Indian nationhood and not just the statehood. Thank you. Thank you very much.